good morning, everybody. This is a complex question, really, and I would like to introduce our study, and I will try to answer the question. Some background. Piglet survival in maternity is a technical, economic, and major society challenge. Mortality is still relatively high, more than 20% in most cases, and it varies a lot from one farm to another. And although the risk factors are well known, they vary a lot depending on the size of the litter, the piglet's characteristics, the sow's characteristics, and the husbandry practices. Now, controlling them is not so easy in the breeding farms, especially with the more prolific herds. As we heard this morning, there are new types of maternity pens now where the sows are free, and so questions are being raised regarding the impact of these alternative maternity pens on mortality risk for the piglets. The objective was to analyze variability of the results obtained from French farms based on recent data to try and research and determine which breeding farm profile would reconcile better weaning performances, survival in maternity, and prolificacy levels. And we also wanted to take in consideration the diversity of the husbandry methods and the equipment used for the maternity pens. The data we worked on is our data from technical sow herd management systems from the GT porc the system. We used the average result from 1,013 breeding farms who participated in calculating the references in 2022. The criteria were calculated and were size of total litter, piglets born alive, and total number of piglets born, mortality criteria, the number of stillborn, mummified piglets, also criteria regarding lactation, how many foster sows were used or artificial milk administration, other criteria which I will not go into today because you can find them in the documents such as gestation, age at weaning, and percentage of fertility. And finally, characteristics regarding the farms which can be found in the GT porc characteristics such as the area, the size of the farm, the husbandry technique, conventional versus organic, free-ranging versus indoor, and collective maternity. And finally, for the specific requests for this farm, for this work, we interviewed the farm owners to find out whether they had these free maternity pens and also the platform maternity pens. We tried to determine a type of characteristics. We use a correlation analysis plus ACP, factorial mixed data factorial analysis, 15 quantitative variables and 15 qualitative active variables. Some variables were not often represented, such as the platform cages or the free maternity pens, and they were added to the analysis as additional variables without any specific contribution. Finally, we also defined a hierarchical ascending classification consolidated with a K-means classification. That's for specialists of statistics, which I'm not. And the number of groups was determined after the variances were analyzed, and we took in consideration the contribution made by our interesting variables such as size of litter, weaned piglets, and mortality criteria. And finally, we went on to characterize the groups derived from these typologies, and we compared them among each other. And we also conducted an analysis on a subgroup of farms who weaned the highest number of piglets, but I won't go into those results today. Now, a few results, average results from the 2022 sample. Just for your information, in average in 2022, the farms produced 16.7 total number of born piglets, 15.4 born alive, which meant 13 piglets weaned per litter, which is higher, plus 1.5% in 10 years. There were high losses, total losses over the total number of piglets born, 21%, born alive 15%, and stillborn 7.6%. On the curve on the right-hand side, you see the percentage of piglets born alive and the losses over the number of piglets born alive. So you see both the losses and the prolificacy, which obviously it reduces the benefit and the of prolificacy in some farms. There is a big difference between the farms, and the criteria with the greatest variability are shown here with a variation coefficient, such as mortality rate, with a variation coefficient greater than 7.8%. And you see also that the upper third of the farms had weaning performances at a very high level, above 13.5, and the highest 10% actually weaned 14.4 piglets. Between 2022 and 2024, the gap in the number of weaned piglets between the best farms and the worst farms is actually increasing. It looks like the farms nowadays are in greater difficulty to wean a large number of piglets versus 2022. And if we look at the correlation between the weaned piglets, prolificacy, and the losses over the total sample, we see the left-hand side column, the number of weaned piglets correlates favorably to the size of the litter born alive and total number of piglets born. And we see the correlation with the frequency of foster sows and artificial milk distribution. However, there is an ambivalent role to explain the variability in the performances, because we see that the large litters are combined with higher losses.
Voilà. Alors, la typologie globale.
Overall typology, which results did we get? Our analysis yielded explanations for 63% of our data set, thanks to 6 dimensions. Classification allowed us to determine 5 groups of breeding farms which were statistically different. According to the groups, 8 to 16 variables contributed to provide an explanation for the group characteristics. Here you see on this table in decreasing order, the contribution made by all the quantitative variables. The first position, we have the total percentage of foster sows or artificial milk distribution. And we have the size of the litter and the age at weaning. But we have other variables with a lower contribution, but still they are in the model, such as the rate of mummified piglets. And we have qualitative contributions on the right-hand side. We're not going into them because we will talk about them when we look at the identified groups. And these are the groups, 5 profiles, classified as a function of the size of weaned piglets. So depending on the size of the litter, and we have different contributions, 5 variables, weaned piglets, prolificacy, and losses, which actually matches the question we were asking earlier. Group 1 is very small. 14 farms in Group 1, 1% of the sample. The group with the smallest number of weaned piglets, 11.4. However, the size of the initial litter is quite high, completely comparable with the litters we find in farms where they wean a greater number of piglets. The losses are highest in this particular group, and the reproductive performances are not extraordinary. We have very few foster sows. These are small farms located outside of Brittany. And usually, most of the time, these are farms with free-ranging animals or organic farms. And we also have no collective maternities and maternities where the sows are free. Group 2, we have 42% of the farms from the sample, a bit more numerous. The size of weaned litters is quite comparable to the numbers we achieved in Group 1, not very high. And the size of the litter is not very high either. Actually, they're the lowest in the whole sample. However, the piglet survival is better. Reproductive results are not worth writing home about. And which are these farms? We're talking about small farms outside of Brittany most of the time, and a large proportion are actually overseas farms and conventional housing, a few maternity pens where the pigs are free, and very few platform maternity pen. Here we should try to do some prevention and reduce mortality. Group 3, who are the farms in Group 3?
Tout à l'heure, c'était 12%.
It was 12%, sorry. Now we have 42% in this group of the sample represented. The size of the litter is slightly higher, and the size of the weaned litter is higher, and the size of the initial litter is also higher. However, losses in the maternity pen, well, the results are not very good. 18% of losses over the total number of piglets born alive. Good fertility, and we see a number of foster sows or piglets weaned with artificial milk distribution. These farms are represented over the whole French territory. We're talking about average size farms, conventional housing. And here we have a few collective maternity wards, a few maternity pens where the sows are free, and some with a platform. Group 4. Group 4 is a big group, 34% of the sample. There's more diversity here. This is a group where the size of the weaned litter is in excess of 13%. Prolificacy is high, 16.2 total number of piglets born alive. And the losses are in green because they're not very high. Productive performances are very, very good. These are good farms, and we have 1.2% of foster sows or milk distribution. These are farms found in Brittany mostly, large farms, conventional housing, and also high percentage of collective maternities, a few maternity pens where the sows are free, and many more maternity pens with a platform. Group 5, the last group, is a small group again. This is a very limited group, 9% of the breeders with the biggest weaned litter, more than 14 piglets. They also have the highest number of total number of piglets born alive, 18. And the losses over the total number of piglets born alive, quite comparable to group 2 and higher than group 4, which we just described. Reproductive performances are very high, a relatively high number of foster sows or piglets raised on artificial milk. And they focus very much on nursing for those piglets and milk distribution. And these are bigger farms than in Group 4. They are mostly located in Brittany, conventional housing, some collective maternity wards, no maternity pens where the sows are free, and a few with a platform. Clearly, to answer the initial question, Group 4 seems to be the group in which we can find farms which most likely to reconcile the 3 criteria: number of weaned piglets, prolificacy, and losses. If we want to represent the 5 groups of farms on this graph, or several graphs really, yes, we're reaching the conclusion. We confirm the favorable relationship between the total number of weaned piglets and the piglets born alive when you see the variability of the results. And we see the group 4 here in red, which is our champion, our best group, and the blue G3 group as well. We see the results are located more or less in the same range of prolificacy for both groups. However, group 4 has more weaned piglets and less losses. This is where I'm going to stop, and you will find in this article information on the impact of platforms, the impact of the maternity pens where the sows are free, although the sample was not good enough for conclusive observations. The conclusions showed good variability of the weaning results and survival results according to the farms. The ambivalent role of the large litters to explain the diversity in the typology shows that the conclusions are more nuanced. Controlling survival is difficult regardless of the level of prolificacy, including in the farms where they have less than 14 piglets born alive. In a range between 14 and 16, it is possible to reconcile a good level of weaned piglets with better control of mortality. Group 4, some favorable factors were confirmed: strategy for lactation in the large litters, housing method, and large size farms with a specialized workforce. Future perspectives. The G3T references we used are useful to make progress. However, it might be necessary in the future to combine new information on husbandry practices, equipment, and housing to understand the secret of those farms which can better reconcile prolificacy, number of survival and profitability. And we have to adapt the objective to match those farms.